Yo, Elder, yada sepa nyame onhira wo. Ebre aso se yehye awia dwumadie na seti. Mesre se Mr. Ofori from Pon and so was here. Obey your translation or am I? Okay. I would like to welcome each and every one of us to our afternoon session. This afternoon, as the announcement went in the morning, we are so privileged to have our dear sister Nancy, Dr. Nancy, to lead us in the session with the topic that was mentioned in the morning.
Last week, San Dr. Nancy Sashia Aviain so. Na what ye name war yen away assume yen.
Before we start, this is how the program is going to be. You're going to have a prayer, then you have some songs from some of our children who have prepared themselves to give us song ministration. Then we will have our lesson from Dr. Nancy. We have some questions and contributions, and we have our Vesper service by our dear sister Bridget. Then Pastor Emmanuel sir will bless us. Then we finish our program.
Na say na adisuani ni diso beye. Pa bobeba na fe mafra ni bi asiesie ho beto dwom titu bi bekoso. Eno achi ansa na Dr. Nancy akasa. Na se okasa ewia e bema ho kwan amansen bisa akoso. Nsen bisa na chi no Bridget ebeye yesu na etwato na maye. Na afe Pastor Emmanuel Sen extra eso amaye.
So before we start everything, let's bow down our heads for a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for the opportunity given us this afternoon to come before your presence once again. Father, we are here to learn more about you and about things that will help us in our community. We would like to commit this afternoon's service into your hands, especially our dear sister Nancy, as you use her every day, every time to teach us new things about the things around us and the things about you. We pray and commit her into your hands this afternoon once again, that you, Lord, take control over her. Let everything that you, Lord, want us to hear come through her to us. We commit our dear sister Bridget into your hands as well. Father, give her the word to comfort us for the week ahead, so that at the end of the day, we will know that indeed we've come closer to you and you, Lord, have been within us and around us. We thank you for an answered prayer. In the mighty name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, so at this time, I will ask Uncle Stephen to lead us as we ask Nana Puache and siblings to sing for us. So Uncle Stephen, if you can hear me, please help us to play the song from Nana Puache and siblings, please.
Mr. Stevens, I want to encounter Nana watching Kitwa or Nini Nyan Sisum. I'm more tuning setting up my adasi.
Triumphantly reign.
Amazing. This is amazing,
Amen.
Uncle. May God bless you and your family. And we hope to hear more and more. God bless you.
Opani Stephen, one will be soon. Yamin Shao. Becky, God bless you so much. Yamin Shamina, my dear. You bet you be.
Yeah, we hope to hear more. We still have some time for another song. So if we can hear from the children's choir again, then we continue from there.
Nti epasi ate nwom baako bi onye te pra kwan mu Emma Dr. Nancy. Nti ebesese children's choir ne nwom no ho a mo nsa fa nhyimaye na yemfa nti kwan ma Dr. Nancy.
Amen. Okay. So it's now time for our lesson. So if Dr. Nancy is online, I'll hand over to her.
Dr. Nancy, this was in a channel.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
That's sentence for my friend.
I was saying last week to Nana that everyone's going to be tired of seeing my face because I keep doing another program.
Now we need another check as I make a chance. If I bring me so in many who have been.
But we thank God that He's able to allow us to have these discussions and a space to learn from each other. So as always, I prefer if my presentations are interactive as much as possible.
I said that me pen and yalam per se, see media this yenuma, a young Casahum be
So I will invite you to share any ideas that you have, any experiences that you have, so that we can continue to learn from each other.
Yeah, when you be only in I bet check, not fee, near the Sakesi, yemu.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you right now. So we are talking about children and how to support children in the pandemic.
It's
such a big topic because this pandemic has been mad. There has been so many transitions about the way we work, the way we relate to each other, even how we worship. For children as well, there's having to adapt to working online and then going back to school and exams changing.
And
what we do know is that research shows that the pandemic has had a very significant impact on the emotional well-being of everybody. So hopefully today we will go through not just highlighting what the challenges are, but some very practical strategies as parents, as church community that we can implement to support the mental well-being of children. So first, I want to invite, please unmute your mic and to share what are the signs when you notice if a child is struggling with lockdown? And I've just got a prompt there. It could be physical signs that the child reports. It could be emotional signs that you see, or it could be behaviors or anything outside of that.
Yeah, sometimes they are withdrawn. They are off character. So that will prompt you to know that there's something going on in their lives.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I told my mom in Sassuanya and Timinim Semitimi Casa.
Kasa, Mr. Stephen.
Yeah, dear, ye back concerning some of Ranayana or my restless because ya two omopunumushe fies are ya omuntimin piano. Afe na ahwadine jina mumuni nyina mo asane agu efie ho enti.
All right. So Mr. Stephen is also saying that one thing he has noticed is that they become restless, and for the fact that they can't step outside, they have invested all the energy on the parents at home.
Yeah, absolutely. What would we describe those emotions? What emotions or feelings are there?
And in sa esuya na omukomu no se na yebesi akere asiafa. Hega, yeah, manenko, yes sir.
So mekai sɛ meyɛ adwuma kakra wɔ nursery na deɛ na ɔmo ka ne sɛ nkwaraa no ɛhyɛ baabiara na sɛ ɛwɔ sɛ nka otumi pie kɔ abɔnten kɔ toto ne nsa ɛto mmirika ne ade no ontumi ɛnyɛ a na ama saa active ɛyi na wɔsɛ nke free ne mu no a ɛhyɛ ne mu no ɛma ne ntumi ntena faako sɛdeɛ Uncle Stephen ka no. Na amano aye hyper. As if say what take something but on take it but how initially was a back out. And so intimi man intimi cancer, then it makes them hyper. That's what I know.
I also mentioned that she was once a teacher in the nursery, and one thing she was taught is that when it's time for the kids to step outside to play games, run, and then stretch their arms, and they are not able to do that, they are being suppressed with that power that is pushing them to step out. So they become hyper. So it's just confirming what Stephen has just mentioned. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've been able to really describe a lot of the physical aspects, what we notice and see children doing. How might they be feeling? For example, is it sadness? Is it frustration?
All right. And in Yatimia Church said, yes, Munamanino, Yana Mofrani cum any sunuma yehu. Nayamra again Muniatin cannon so dear name. Send ye besia chesa esio mukum yase, ewo Martin Kemu. So a nijie mom, and answer a reho. Ajopi, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I realized when they were locked down at home with the online learning, they were so frustrated because sometimes you can't type on it, they can't access it. So they were so frustrated and very stressed out.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't helping their mental well-being at all. That's what I realized. Thank you.
Ebanisana enye enije said ye can name na ya reho fi say ye call pandemic mu kra no oma amone mo friend di dwumadie no se mo ko online na se mu sua dia na se mo teacher fokra no mu sua dia obi wo ho a yabusa question na se what typing no ho ba ye den ma no obi wo kra to connect na ne mute no sa ne ma ni nyina no e frustrate mo fra no e ma mo ye stress e ma omo ren so e ho.
Absolutely. So the frustrations being triggered by online schooling or changes in having and how they kind of make sense of the world, the uncertainty, a lot of different challenges that they have to manage.
How be brain na omukom se online adisua no ene so koso na ontimi koso sa ha oni nyina na eye adwene no mo kesene.
I worked with a young girl yesterday and she was telling me that she felt really lonely. She felt really lonely because she hadn't been able to see her friends and it just didn't feel the same with looking at them on the screen.
Yeah, Abranti will be kase no kase. Sa pandemic ya be na de how be brain na aba na ya hudie be brain free say. E wo mu say wo betimi obi akasa e wo hwetie afidie so de nanso no entisa woni ni gina honam ne honam ani na mo kasa no.
Is there anything else anybody wants to add to this before we move on to the next section?
So obi betimi de mo afoforo bi aka ho ansa na yakoyanim atoa ya adisua ne so. Obi wo mo bi na question bi a opese wo de bansa na atoa so ana.
Okay.
I would like to say it brings anxiety as well.
Yes.
As they get so anxious as to what the future holds for them, and what if they go out there or their moms or parents go out there and catch coronavirus. So a lot of anxiety here and there goes on as well.
Yeah.
Afei so na di hu kase nso ebɔhyɛ emofra ni mu sɛ mami epia kɔ adwuma pa daddy epia kɔ sto akɔta de ebe ɔkɔte corona abrɛ na yempo yɛ kɔfo basa kɔ school so yɛ kɔte yare ni bi aba na ntie de hu bebree nso ana aba.
Absolutely. So the anxiety of, will I get sick? Will my parents be sick? Also the anxiety around exams. You know, for a lot of the teens, the idea around not doing GCSEs or predicted grades can cause a lot of stress and anxiety about their future.
Ana bebree nso no ehu no ayade ahye mu ne yɛ sɛ sesei no adesua kra no yɛtwɛ wo mɔde mo na de woyɛ ndada na yɛde agrade ɛno nti no saa nneɛma nyinaa no edi hu aba bɛhyɛ adesuafoɔ bebree mmɔfra anaasɛ young people mu suade no nyinaa de hu bebree ana abɛhyɛ mu.
But spotting emotional difficulties in children can sometimes be really difficult. And I'm curious if others have ideas on why sometimes we might struggle to see if our children or young people are struggling. What are the barriers to it?
How I say muna I am not den because no beyond the betting pong say our friend no what do mu how no or bread a woman. Tikamba first why be who sa name.
Nancy, can you please ask the question again? Because I think I had a different question altogether.
So my question is, sometimes we might find it tricky to notice when a child or young person is struggling. Why might that be? What makes it difficult if I notice it? Yeah,
that's how I got the question. But I'm saying, for you to be said before I'm saying,
yes, I told you I'm not adding so who say Abofrano air challenges bebree. The
person can say it to the beer mpanyinfo na ankasa no de abofra ne kom no eno abi no so kom enti no senka ono no benya adwen mu da ho na nka ode ahwe ne ba no ono ankasa na de ekoso na affect no in a way enti ontumi enya time ana say ontumi manani nda ho no nhwe de ekoso wo ne ba no so abrabo.
Yeah.
So many of our parents are going through such challenges or problems. So they are not even able to solve themselves to look after the children, to see what they are going through, because they are already in that same situation.
Absolutely.
Gloria's hands are up, yeah, and then Auntie P.
I think also depending on age, it could be that they're not comfortable sharing, or if they're a little bit younger, it might be they don't really understand what's going on or how they feel, and so it's difficult for them to voice it to their parents or whoever.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as Gloria to say, a bit me about say bia a fear edieno obi on ma ayana usa entino un nani nyese one awofo no ebeche saasua hu no ekoba ne sana na sa haw no aka sa mofra no eso Auntie P.
Also the parents, some of us are not very observant, so when there is something we don't even have much time, we don't spend time together with them. So if they are going through this emotional trauma, we won't be able to identify them. We don't spend much time with them and we don't observe them properly.
Absolutely.
Say, awofoɔ no anaasɛ mpanyinfoɔ no bebree wɔ nso ɛyɛ na yɛni ɛna hɔ papa saa ɛno nti ne sɛ mmɔfra no tebea no ɛsesa kakra bi a yɛntumi nhu na ɔmo nam saa ɛso ma ɔmo ɛfa saa ɛhaw no mu anaasɛ suahu mu ɛno nti na anida hɔ a ɛyɛ na ɛnsi pi bebree no ɛma saa deɛ no ɛtumi ba na Claire, last person.
I think sometimes we're also quick to maybe label it as bad behavior or misbehavior. So the child might be behaving different, but we just assume, why can't you get over it? What's wrong with you? That kind of thing.
Now, can you say again? Sorry.
I was just saying, sometimes we are quick to label it as misbehavior or bad behavior. So we think the child is playing up or acting up, rather than seeing it as a symptom of something else.
Ɛtɔbrɛ bi nso a yɛ ne yɛ awofoɔ no abɔfra no yɛ biribi na yɛde ahyɛ sɛ ni subɔne bi a ɔda n'adi yɛn tɔnkɔ so anaasɛ yɛn mmieni na ɔne ehu sɛ ɛyɛ haw bi a ebi a ɛba ne so anaasɛ ɔɔfa mu ne afa ne sɛ asoɔden anaasɛ tie na wo n'aso na ayɛ den na wɔsesa afiri akwan bi so.
Some really, really rich ideas. So there is something about, do we understand the behavior that we're seeing as a call for help, or do we mislabel it as problematic? Or is it that perhaps we're not always as observant around the behaviors? Or are we anticipating, oh, if the child is sad, they'll tell me, but do they have the emotional language? Do they have the ability to communicate and express that in a way that we are, I guess, hoping?
Mmɔfra no ɛkɔ saa suahu mu no a so ɛyɛ a na yɛhu ne sɛ wɔn mu su no ana ɛsesa anaasɛ asoɔden ana wɔn ayɛ anaasɛ wɔn mu yɛ anya adwemmhaw bi ana wɔn kɔm na mpo ebi a wɔn mu nhunu ɛkwan a bɛfa so a wɔn ne yɛbɛdi nkitaho ɛfa sɛnea wɔn kɔm no anaasɛ yɛn nso ebi a yɛ ne yɛhu na yɛbu yɛn ani na agu so afiri si yɛnim sɛ ɛyɛ asoɔden sɛ na wɔn yɛ anaa.
And actually, a study here reported, especially for kind of young people, that it was really difficult to tell if a young person was depressed, because 40% of people felt like, well, they're always up and down in their emotions. How can I know if they're depressed? 30% saying, oh, they always hide how they're feeling. They don't talk about it very much. Or generally that they don't talk about feelings very much in the home environment, as a family, or simply as well because you don't spend time with the youth. So how can they open up? Equally, what are the signs of depression? Because actually that might slightly differ for each child.
Nuntino, nsɔhwɛ kakra bi ɛkɔ so ɛfa awofoɔ sɛ wɔn hu sɛ mmɔfra nso no akɔ nnwuduyɛ mu anaasɛ adwene mu ɛhaw emu. Na bɔha mu abupɛn bɛyɛ aduanan ɛka sɛ ɛyɛ ana ɛden sɛ wobɛhu sɛ obi bɔ ne ho mmɔden anaasɛ ɔrekɔ fam ɛberɛ a wakɔ nnwuduyɛ anaasɛ mmubuo emu anaa adwene mu haw mu. Na ɔse na mu wɔha mu aduasa nso ɛka sɛ ɛyɛ mmabunu no deɛ ɛyɛ ano ɔmo yɛ adeɛ yie paa sɛ wɔn do atenka bɛsie so ɔmo kɔ saa nsɔhwɛ no emu na emu edunan nso ka sɛ yɛn kasa ɛmfa yɛn atenka ho bebree sɛ yɛkɔ saa no a obi a ɔmpɛ so ɔbɛkasa koraa na wakoko ne ho ti no nhunu ahaw a ɔrekɔ mu no n'atenka ne nkyerɛ wo saa emu nso sɛ wɔnsɛe brɛ bebree. Uni mabruno ensɛ adagye eni nkitaho emu enso no sɛ yɛne mabruno ensɛ bre ni nkitaho no ana afa emu nan so sɛ ɔmo deɛ ɔmo anhu nsesaeɛ a ɛba so bi kɔ nnwuduyɛ anaasɛ adwene mu haw mu na.
Actually, often what we see is that stress or anxiety or emotions can present itself in very different ways. In our behaviors, in how we're thinking or feeling. how we're thinking or how we are feeling, but also in our physical sensations as well. So let me let you translate, sorry.
So amumbuye anasa adwumhai no se eba oso na edin se enipa bebrebe hu sania watenka etie anasa sania wo dwenfa.
So for example, with adults, some people when they're stressed, they eat a lot, they comfort eat, or they just kind of notice themselves feeling really exhausted, or they find it difficult to focus, or being very irritable and ratty, you know, snapping at people, or having headaches.
So yeah, say penfo say no, si nya adwumhawa. Ubo se bebre ho no na onya adwumhawa make us stress na. Odidi bebre kakra bia na nsa da tofi na nsa da no odidi sa. Bebre so ho no so na omo ekọ omo te wo ho efiri afoforo eho. Ebi nso ho aya no ma bre.
And when you compare that to children when they're stressed, what you might see is fussy eating, or for them being very, very clingy. You know, they don't want to let go of you. They don't want to give you any time by yourself. They want to stay next to you, or being super hyperactive or fidgety, wanting to be able to control the things, wanting control over the little things that they have or can do, or throwing tantrums. Again, it reminds me of what Nakle was saying about labeling bad behavior as bad behavior, but actually, is that an expression of the child being overwhelmed or being stressed? Or you might get, for example, school starting and the child is feeling really nervous, but instead of saying, I'm really worried about school, they come and say, Mummy, Daddy, my head is hurting, or I've got a tummy ache. And you just say, it's all right, just go. But the child is communicating something.
Penfonia and Mofan the esi pae sonko, and Mofan the Senka Penfonia and Maudi Breno, and Mofan the Antissa, and only the Mamma Crichum, I did the animal. Now, fe omo I basa, as a bibia no mu to etare, bibia na omo ebin ben. A bidum qua trauma the Antisabian Cabrasso Oboco school no. Ontimi nkase ma brese na meko no ade ahyese bia metie me ya anase mensawe se ebu wa na menamu eye me ya ti omo nso kwan a omo fa so e de kyerese omo anyadwin ha anase omo abre no eno.
So it's important for us to be attentive to how our child may be communicating different emotions to us, and that sometimes this even mirrors our own behaviors when we are feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anxious.
So, sir, a bad day, sir, I'm a fan of betting actually, sir, Omoko, sir, a sunma. Said they had it to 2 years, the no, sir, to the beer yen suit, and I say, Yagrim, a ham, a banner, a buy in a different way. Sir, I'm a fan of the answers.
And here is just a summary of other examples of what anxiety might look like in children or young people. And I think the one that stands out to me is particularly around the struggling to focus or pay attention. And if you were noticing kind of children when they were sitting in front of their screens, it's so difficult to absolutely focus when, for example, if you're being tested or the teacher's calling on you or you just don't feel settled, that anxiety can make it really difficult for you to focus and to pay attention.
Now, I'm a fan of Munya, how now. Omo the end the end says, Afidia knew to say the tea na. Ana day man say, Obesi na drink na ye edia tea your chechenino, Casana say, Oberhen and importe. Bones are dreaming how no struggle against the focus now by the tea assembly.
And what we do know is that when it comes to more significant mental health challenges, for example, depression, they can also present with very similar symptoms.
Na se eba se adwimu mubuye no nso eba na eno nso na the signs and symptoms na eya ne mroye no de no ayepe.
So the main difference with regards to the presentation of depression, which is different from someone just feeling a bit sad.
Adwimu mubuye no de na eno ne signs and symptoms no eye sunko efri obi a ne werɛ ahoɔ esu emu anaa kyɛnkyɛn.
Is that there is a very consistent low mood. So this isn't something that goes up and down. It stays, it sticks. It's really difficult to shift.
Enti na emubuya ne deɛ na mfa depression ne deɛ ne deɛ wo low mood no sɛ wokɔ atenka a ɛwɔ fam paa mu na ɛnyɛ sɛ ba na ɛkɔ waka hɔ ara sɛ wayɛ mmerɛ ɛwɔ watenka ne mu ankasa.
You may notice as well that they just have very little interest in activities. The things that they used to enjoy doing, it just doesn't, they don't enjoy those spaces, those activities anymore.
Nti wo nso wakɔ ne ho sɛ ntoma mu na ɔhyɛ mu saa daa ne daa brabɔ no deɛ wɔyɛyɛ no ɔsaa no pa activity bi anka ɛyɛ no ofie no wɔagyae ne nyinaa ɛyɛ.
It's also important to notice language. So if the child is talking about, or young person is talking about everything in a very negative light, so for example, being very critical of themselves, being preoccupied with failures, or kind of having trouble letting go of past mistakes, these are ways of kind of hearing what somebody's thoughts are. If somebody has criticized themselves, oh, I'm rubbish at this, oh, I'm never going to be good at that. If you're noticing that persistent kind of communication, this may be an indication of kind of negative thoughts being around.
And I think so no signs ni be man as symptoms ni be by sound say once a sa oni chrono that bia wo ye bia no on kase be wie ye e manida ana media me nyade a metimi aye nyade a metimi aso free mpam kwan masiesie den ma say bia no oka nya ensi ye nkwa ana ma ne ho.
And of course, in collaboration with a lot of these other symptoms that we might see, for example, being agitated or having losing their appetite or even eating more sometimes, or sleeping more, or having difficulty sleeping.
Entino sani abubo bi esa can't say the di can abubo so bi a obedi di bebre anase bi wo ho beda bebre anase on na kra no sani mani nyina so edika ho anase obi a bi kitu bi na ne boafu.
So what I wanted to do is to just strip it back to basics.
There
is this researcher called Maslow, and what he's done is to demonstrate through this pyramid diagram that we all have needs that we need to be able to have fulfilled.
Hierarchy
So imagine these needs, or these level of needs, almost like vitamins, right? If you want your body to operate and to function at its best, you need to be able to kind of build them up. So there are essential vitamins that you need to be able to have, and then additional ones that you bolt on. So if you're deficient in one area, it may be something that you need to be intentional about nurturing in order to help you to function better. So the basic needs at the bottom are basically around food, shelter, water, nutrition, just being able to kind of nourish your body physically. And can I just highlight as well that these needs are important if you want your child to thrive in education as well. So you need to be attending to these needs, not just for their emotional well-being, but also so they can engage well in any activities that they're doing.
Basic needs no. Nemum se be betia memo so abom homodin e wadi suemu anase dwumadie bia mu no ese sa hiade we sei no omo satimika.
So those basic needs at the bottom, if you are thinking about how do you support learning needs, it's about how you create a safe environment that's quiet for your child to focus on learning. Do they have the right resources around them?
ahiade a edi kan ne nso no ebi ne sɛ wo tiesie biaeɛ na wopɛ sɛ abɔfra no sua adeɛ no ahiadeɛ bi a obɛhia fa ɛbɛboa na mana de sua no atumi akɔ so kama no wosiesie saa nneɛma nyinaa ayɛ ho nhyehyɛeɛ ama no.
And of course, making sure that your child is physically safe from catching coronavirus. So I guess this is part of why some people found it difficult that the government didn't close schools to prevent the spread, even though children were less likely to have significant side effects from COVID. The next level is safety and well-being.
Now, if we
just essentially with that, for coronavirus specifically, what you want to do is to ensure that the children hold an understanding of the virus. Why are some people in isolation? How can they expect to move forward? This helps a child to frame and understand how they are being looked after in relation to the pandemic, in relation to the virus. And love and belonging is another essential feature that's important for children, for all humans. This is not even for children, sorry, this is for humans to experience that sense of being connected or friendship, the sense of belonging. This is why isolation was so difficult for everybody.
No, so no, a one ehia pa ntina ye call sa how no obintimi hu onuane ye nsa ye ho na aye din amaye if you say sa ahiade no ayira.
So for children, helping them to understand that others are in the same situation as well helps them to know that there's a community that is also experiencing the same impact and we're in it together.
Yeah, my friend so better no matimiate sa adiwe ase ewo hawe omuya omuntimi nso nko omunuanom honom wo ye mpotam na ye wono ye hu se ye nyina ne akeken ho abom kama.
The next essential one is self-esteem.
That ye tosu ebiemu no enso ne se wa kasa ujinaye anase wa hu ni bie wa ujinaye.
So for example, if you think about maybe during lockdown, I noticed myself feeling a real sense of, have I achieved anything? Have I done anything? And that can really diminish your sense of accomplishment. So for children, all of us, we need to be able to know that we are achieving something, that we are being able to build new skills, that we are, doing meaningful things in our lives.
To say, one casa we see Nebisem Pesemi, aha, and a midina pain yentino. COVID you and answer how me away, no, you move a brain or at me, as she be a may and one, and not your day air bought your home by.
So with this, I want you to remember to possibly think about how can you implement this in supporting your child or the young person that you have. So for example, are you giving them praise for what they're able to achieve? Are you acknowledging their emotional needs? Are you offering them that support? Are you validating that sense of love and belongingness and the need for connection?
And me pese to asembi say ma hu say emwa be na ode boa emofra no ama omahu say omahia de a omuhia nie omo ahobambo no omo wokuo bi edom a omo so betimi anhyehye bi ama omo say me pese me duru gina penwe na obetu anama ho sa.
When it comes to emotional regulation, the first thing I want to forget that. The first thing in being able to really support a child in being able to cope better is first to make sure you are coping.
Atapɔyɛ deɛ di kan a ɛbɛtumi aboa mu ahunu sɛ woboa abɔfra a wɔkɔ saa ɛhaw a ɛte sɛ mu bi no deɛ di kan ne sɛ wobɛtumi asi gyinaeɛ ɛwɔ saa ɔhaw no mu.
And for some people, it might be a struggle to think, wait, I can't put myself first. That feels selfish. Or, you know, maybe they've always been taught to put others before them. But the idea of self-care is about including yourself in those self-care practices. It's not about putting yourself before everybody else. It's about making sure you are also attended to within that.
Yatin bebree sɛ yɛ obi die yɛ na ɔde yɛ anaasɛ yɛnhwehwɛ afoforɔ ahi adeɛ ansa na yɛyɛ adwene yɛn ho no nanso adesua kyerɛkyerɛ me ahu sɛ ɛwɔ sɛ wohunu sɛ wasi gyinaeɛ ɛwɔ mu ansa na watumi asɔ wo nua mu atwetwe no anaasɛ waboa no wɔ ne haw.
So, you know, like when you go on the airplane and they tell you before the airplane takes off, if there's ever any turbulence or the oxygen level drops, there's going to be a mask, and they want the parents to put theirs on first so that they can help the child. Because if you pass out trying to put it on to the child, you're not there, you can't help them, you can't keep them safe thereafter. So put your mask on first so that you can help your child.
Na ya cheche mu se BBC wo plane ma na se kwan bi beda ho man farmacia ase se ba mu a na ya se ya de mask ehye na so wo de abofra ne nam a cheche ne che se di kan fa wo de ne hye ansa na wabo abofra no senti ni se so wa gin so wo koya abofra ne de na sa ba yo de na in the place ya abofra de se wo free mu a wa nwa abofra na adwuma no hwan na beboa no oni ahode obeti dia.
And just to highlight, I talked about it in another presentation. I won't go into this in depth, but there are 7 different types of rest that you can have. So often we think about rest as stopping or, you know, carving out these elaborate times for ourselves. And we honestly, it doesn't feel like we have time to do that. But there are different ways that we can recharge and restore ourselves to help to sustain us during very challenging or demanding times.
Na ya kire enyema enso anasatapo na atrapoye enso bi a ye fa so e de home e se todo bi a na e din se ubetimi ayesa na enso akonya bebre ho ma e betimi afa so.
So there's mental rest, there's physical rest, that might be, for example, taking naps or just doing some exercise or some calming exercises. Social rest, which will be connecting with other people, right? Being able to talk to others. Sensory rest, you know, not having so much overload with sensory things. For example, if your TV's on and then the alarm's going and then someone's shouting, just finding a way to calm the environment. Emotional rest, which is really about that offloading, that sharing of any difficulties you have, expressing those emotions. Spiritual rest is essential. We're recharging, connecting to the values that God has told us. And creative rest, connecting to things that inspire you. Sorry, Ofori, I just realized that was a lot to translate.
All right. And you try before we betumi anya home ye di kan mental rest no. See ma adwene no ahome. Ye ma adwene no ahome afra dwendwen bebre emu. Physical rest ni peduane nso no age na home. Social rest. See ani amanfo bebre enya nkita ho a apomuden ewomu. Sirie fam ewom no na afi aboya me enya ahome. Ana say sensory rest no. Sanka baby a dedede ne kakane nyama bebre wo se wa film TV sisu machine sisu we ye dede nansu ni nyina mu utimi dwodwo no na wonya home ewo mu ana se ye ma ye na tenkan so no enkoso bebre na mum no ye dwodwo ano se ye ka ye nhaw na free enso na ye nya home ana se ye nsuma na se ye ngidie ni nso no eboa ye ama ya dwodwo nasi yenya home ewo yen abrabum ana afe nso no efa abodie mu nso ne atwa ho ahia no ekwan efa so nso no enam eno so nso enya ahome.
Wow, well done. So, okay, I'm going to go into the practical skills and how you help to manage emotions. First, I want to explain what emotional regulation is.
Can you come again? Sorry.
So I want to explain emotional regulation, managing your emotions.
And to say about the chechemia me who acquire befaswa ye betimi akra yen I think.
So emotional, to regulate our emotions, to manage our emotions, it's a skill that we learn.
Ye betimi akra yen I think
we either learn it through going through emotionally challenging situations, or we learn it through seeing how other people cope, or we learn it through other people teaching us how to cope. And as a child grows, a child is not kind of born with an ability to kind of regulate their emotions. They require others around them to support them with it. And as they grow older, the amount of support they need or how we support them to manage emotions will change.
Na ekwan fa so abo mama sa omo atenka na si gina no na eno so sesa.
When you really grasp this idea, I notice how it changes. So for example, with my daughter Eden, if she is crying and screaming, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, you're making so much noise, why can't you just relax? Recognizing she doesn't have the skills and tools to do so reminds me that I need to be patient to support her to regulate those emotions. So for children, the first thing we're trying to do for children and young people is to notice the symptoms. So notice the feelings that are around. So what you're doing is trying to give them a language. So if, for example, the child doesn't know if you ask them, oh, how are you feeling, and they're struggling, it might say, it seems like you feel sad. Do you feel sad? I notice you're crying. Are you feeling sad? So for Eden, she will say, I cry. Like she knows when she's feeling sad to be able to say it's tears. Tears are when I'm crying, when I'm feeling sad. And one way you can build up that emotional literacy is through even watching TV shows or reading books or movies, or even people that you encounter in daily life, being able to highlight, Grandma was sad today, or if you're watching a movie and the child is happy, oh, she looks so excited. You're offering a language and helping them to identify those emotions, right?
Grandma and my who knows hey, Papa,
it's important that you're not telling them how they feel, you're offering them a way of understanding their emotions. So it could be that it's different things, but what you want to do is to try to start to build a language around it.
Into one country, said your Martinka at your name, who church mamma, said they are omuko esubium now, atenkakra or mumusabem.
So secondly, in identifying those feelings, especially for kind of older children, what you want them to do is try to describe the intensity of those feelings.
And to say I am penny for so no, so now and chechemu, a mabno so ban so checho musena, a bomb momusu said your Martin cano I could do an asset here.
So anger is frustration or irritation or yeah, I've forgotten whatever words, but yeah, it can almost come in different volumes, so to speak, right?
abufuo enso eba ewo akwan hodo bebre so miyebufu de kire yani a abre ewo bibiri so anase how bi ana ya obi a yekom no itimi eda abufuo adi de kire senya ete.
Then you want to offer them concrete strategies to help them calm down. And so we'll go into some of those in a bit, but yeah, you want to help them to learn concrete strategies to manage emotions.
And na akwanya bi wo ho ma ye ba besua de beboa ya ye betimi nso de akropra na se asiesie yensu se ekọ du sat na.
And you then want to be able to implement those strategies. So when they are very upset, it's important for you to support them to try the things that you know helps them to calm down. So sometimes that's reminding them, sometimes that's helping them to do it, sometimes that's modeling it for them.
No, akwanya bi a enam so ma wo de aboa mo asiesie mo enyesa mo hu emum no wo boa mo amoma hu se esu no so mo komu na omo yese na ebetumi aboa mo asiesie mo adodo ano.
And it's important to remember that you do this according to their developmental stage. So for example, Eden won't necessarily be able to calm herself down, but if I say the word calm down and I move my hand down in emotion, I say calm down, and then we count to 10 slowly together. That calm down has visually offered her something to help her to remind her to slow herself down, to be able to breathe, to count to 10, so she's having a bit more space from that emotion.
Strategies ni bi yes na our farm enfie na wadie na ne se ne nkan ko sitie obi tse Eden no na so suna sempesa medudu ni suna na metimi ase me ne kan no be impredu se jojo usuna no brafom o de brafom na ye science ye de ensa no ye nsenchene de kire se ne ye pese o muntiamu no enkofom anase enrafom.
And the countdown bit. So yeah, but this is something that they learn. So the first time I was doing it to her, she was looking at me like, what are you doing? But now after months of doing it, it's something that we're able to do in the house that she knows is a sign that you're becoming overwhelmed. Can you try and calm down?
Tinyeze bia wo ye na anu wahu ebetimi afa break akra eda edika me ye na bia wona adwun ko ga na dia na me ma me ye na me su na opagya ni say but ogusu na wo tokos na wo ye na no na adwun ne betimi afa me na hu say wo pesa o chen say on kofom on yaisu.
And then the last stage is around start to understand what are the triggers, what are the things that you notice spark big emotions, right? And how can you start to take action to prevent these strategies, to prevent these big emotions from taking over? So for example, if you notice that every time that you're about to put on the blender, they are going to start screaming because they're overwhelmed and scared. Can you bring them by the blender and say, Mommy's going to put it on, and you're pacing them, things to help them to anticipate what's going to happen and to reassure them that they are safe, for example.
I don't know, I think so now, dear, my question is, Niema yana ema emofrano eko sa arohosu na say abufuo esunu no ede be na ema ne basa se ye timi ehu sa niema no ni esi ano a ebeboa asiesie emofrano se bia wo so bibia ebo mu hu ana se wo ye bibia edi hu bobeba no so do mo be ho kase mi yese mi yesa na mo ni da ho ehu ansa no ye na ebeboa akano da.
One thing you can use is kids tend to be very concrete. Younger children like to see something in front of them. That's a visual reminder of these strategies. So having, you can just use coloring pencils, a piece of paper, and you're writing down the different emotions, like all the ones on the left, ranging from being happy and calm, going up to feeling frustrated and angry.
Any tredia ahodo and calasia ahodo no abua asiesie emofrano edoma formatinka esunu se bia tobre bia o trebi biti se anije any kam anije any bokoye ho nsem bi ni wa kruche with color foforo bi na bia areho de now the color for atre sa bufo de ni na watwetwe ne sa ebeboa.
And for children that can't read, using emojis or drawing pictures, ask them to draw pictures or to look at pictures online that match the emotion on this feelings thermometer.
Afei so no obetim the emojis away and phone so anase online crown pictures bia etre obi a ne buafu obi a nani agye obi a wosu obi a wo sere no na de sa fonini nyina no atoto no e de chekire esu ahodo a ikum.
So the key here is not just what emotion are you feeling, but what do you physically see from the child, or what do they say, or what do they do that allows you to know this is the emotion they have? So asking the young child, when you're sad, how do you know you're sad? They might say, oh, I cry, or I don't talk to anybody, or I don't know. It could be anything. You're helping the child to identify, hold on, is this sadness? Because I'm crying, I'm not talking to anybody. So yeah.
Nintino anyese bia o trebi bia na agu okeke na emum no eto bia se oni abofrandi kita ona ma hu se na wre ho a ede no ya e ma hu so wa ro hu se bia me pese me bia be kasa ana se me su bibisa no eboa ma hu ti o hwa abofran esu na nkasa ho ana wo dia yesa hihye.
So on the right here, what we have is what you can do about it. What are the activities you know that helps to calm them or soothe the child when they are in that emotional state? For example, often if a child is angry, that is not the time that you're able to now reason with them and to rationalize with them, because literally the blood flow to the front of your brain that is involved in that thinking has slowed down. People are not thinking rationally. If you've ever seen somebody angry, they're just saying anything, right? They're not necessarily rationalizing, being quite rational in what they're doing. So how do you bring them down to the orange phase so that you can start to engage with them? What you want, yeah, sorry.
Okay, and you know, what found so dear no, nyara ye betimi aye na fe ye de aboase mofra ne ko won atenka ahobi na enintini ye fante abofra ne boafuo na fe owo abufuo atenka nim no enye ho na obetimi na ba betena se na fe okeka eniema bi a anka wo bra kan ni agye na okeka nsa se wunya enhihye ya ebeboa na ebema na bufuo na te akofom efise sa brain ni moja no aba from girls the kokona asori nti na ese onya hihye ya ebeboa na fe adwodwe ne kokona no ansa na watimi na che kasa apesa onene ka.
And this works for adults too. I'm sure if you ask some young people, how do you know when mummy's angry? Oh, she's shouting. Oh, she's doing this. Like, you know, this is something that can be used to help to identify emotions within the family.
Nti no when so yakwa bi so be fa so ebetimi dia bo yabusua mu nso yesu ahodo sa oti sa wo ma ma etiatia mu a na bia ne buafu abufuo ni bana na otiatia ewo wo so ti we ne marketing kiti bia yetimi nso di wo abusua ni nesu ahodo.
I would encourage kind of the parents, if you go on YouTube and look for something called Flip Your Lid.
And penfono me tumo fo se bia oko YouTube na oko kwahwehwe link bia ya title no flip over, flip your lid. Flip your legs.
Your lid,
okay.
Like the top of something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you search for flip your lid, it will show you it's basically using your hand to explain how we go from calm to angry. But yeah, it will give you a way of explaining it to children at different ages.
I don't know, this is YouTube now about flip your lid. I bet one science in Sanchanin Kitty Kitty, yeah, the church say Ubia, Nibufu, and now do not come.
So here's an example of what it might look like when you have completed it. So this will be different for every child, right? And so you've got the blue zone when you're relatively kind of low energy, maybe feeling a bit lethargic. The green zone when you're doing okay, you're feeling good. The yellow zone when you're noticing yourself becoming frustrated, and the red zone when you're feeling very angry.
You know, why Siamiansa ebi ewasia, yeah, the colors are hodo miansa, blue no, Bruno Ejnao Emma se uwo esubimun se bia watinka ekofom anase wayemre. Green no Ejnao Emma ti se ebra bibia eye boko. Ana amba no eye ti se ensencheni bi ba eche se usu no eye asesa eko esubimu a.
So within this, not just saying the things that the young person can do, but also ways that you can help them. So for infant and toddlers, for example, let me just let you finish interpreting that.
Entino adisia yesua no ya de boa me hu se bia efiri mofra mu ekono sabofra no ekosubimu a de betim ya boa.
So for infant and toddlers, you might be trying to ensure that you give them praise and reinforcement when they are using these strategies. So that's a way of encouraging them.
Enti mofra enkitwa na omo sorry no se opese obo omo na uyusu sa strategy na se hihye ya yai ni edi kan se ese wo kamfo omo e wo de omo ye bia.
Help the child to consider a different solution if they notice this one isn't working. Because if you leave them to that, they're going to get frustrated. So why don't we try this?
Enunti no boa omo na omo ntimi nya bi foforo se ne omo ye no ekwan no enkoyi papa se wo mo omo dai na ebe de bufo be so omo so ti boa omo hu se ye betin so aye no kwan foforo se so.
You can role play using teddies and dolls and toys.
Na fe so no obetimi aye role playing say u di bibi demonstration na say u dan bibi di amomo hu dia opese wo kire no betimi the toys aye sa ade no.
And again, it's important for you to prompt them. You need to remind the child that they need to start to or do it with the child, sorry, for them to implement those strategies.
Na e was say wo bo abofra no na oni omo ye na wo kai wo mo. And
when they're between like 5 and 10, you might be intentionally teaching them problem solving. Model the behavior. Remember, children learn more by what they see than what you tell them. So if you tell them don't shout and you're shouting at them when you're telling them don't shout, you're presenting a conflicting message.
Afen so na wo kra wo mo esu no say bia wo chom say mamon tetiem na wo kacha ba fan say eya wo na mamon tetiem na wo kan eya na mamon tetiem say wo yesa na say da wo chacha ba fan say wo pese wo ye no wo ankasa no wo kutia wo.
And if you are, for example, 11 to 14, you want to be encouraging the child to collaboratively problem solve. Let's think together about how we manage this.
Na fe ko 13 for no nso ne de ne ye onu omo ka bom na fe mo ye nhyehyɛ ya won beboa e de asi ohaw ano.
There's lots more, but I'm happy to send the slides to anybody who might want the details, but we're going to go on to how you manage worries about COVID.
Na nhyehyɛ no ho no obi ohia bia no so ma me hu a metimi asende ama na won so asua bibre free mu. Na dia ya duru esu ni ye ekwan ya befa so na afi ya twen ho afi COVID how ye ho.
If there's one thing that children are good at, it's asking you those big questions that will just make you feel like you've studied nothing.
So person who say mo frɛ bo mo ho den a ekwan ni bi ni say o mbebusa nsem bisa bi a wa wudwan wa dwen yo sem se unsua ahwe.
And some of those questions during the period of COVID might be like, doesn't God care? Why is God letting people die? Or why does God let big things happen? Bad things happen?
Nancy bisa ni bi ni say so enti nyame kra into odo into fire ho de enti nipa ebre ko ha we na enti naniku ye ho pa.
And just wanted to offer a bit of a guide on how you could approach that, or any question that they ask that seem quite big. Number one, ask them, what do you think?
Nti emwa kakra ho no a yebetim dia boa na afi sembisa se ni be yiya no na sembisa edikan ne se wo mu busa asa na so ato mo se na so wadwin yo se.
Remember that they're often asking questions because something is going on inside of them, or they have noticed something that's prompted them or motivated them. So it's good to be able to get an exact understanding of why they're asking what they're asking and what their ideas are around it so far.
Kan hu se so mu busa sa asem na eya na bibi koso o madwuma o monto mo ho ase. Nti wo busa se na ebeboa ma watimi ayi o madwum de ekoso wo mu.
And it can save you work, you know, if maybe sometimes they just want a really simple answer of God is here and God protects you, versus you going all the way to Jerusalem and trying to get the most complex answer. So asking them, what do you think, helps you to gauge how should I respond?
Bia wo so to am ma buzom se no ko madwen am se no ebua wo ma niano ne babokoboko since ubetu humpam akohwehwe mu twakwan bebre na nso adu ye ne kakra bi no mpeso mu.
Secondly, ask them, so what do we know?
Na afa tosmi mu so betu abusam se ade ani.
So look at the things, it's about helping the young person to draw on what understandings do you currently have? What do you know? What do you see around you that helps you to have that information?
Anuntino se towiase omubusa ne ebusa se na eboa omu ma nya kakra na yensu yenim efase de ekoso no omu nsu timi trauma adwen sa.
This is a point where you could go to the Bible and say, well, what did we know? What did we know about what the Bible tells us? You can go and look things up together or ask a wise person.
Nti sa ebremu no na beboa ma onimi no timi wura kunkum makwa kwese ade enyenim fa se de yebisa se so nyame ye ofa ye hu no say na Bible no dan ade mi hu se nyame fa ye hu.
And then going on to saying, well, what do we not know? And the importance of this question is showing our children that it's being honest that we don't always know everything. And there are some things that we don't know and God will only reveal to us in time. So it's being able to tolerate and hold that uncertainty rather than assuming you must have the answer for everything.
Na fe wasa twabofana dwen asan si se ade enso na yenim so ebi se nyankopon asem che se enia ebro homa odi hintaye ekopem no ani bru no odan dia che du fa abofan di ni wura sa sunu nem se be ya wo de boa na sem bisana no yi.
And then finally, share how you've handled it. Is this a question that you yourself have struggled or have kind of grappled with? You're trying to show them that this is how you have thought about the question. So rather than jumping to, yeah, let me tell you the answer, you want to encourage a child to think critically, to use the skills, to identify the training that you have already imparted in them. So the last part is about, well, actually, this is how mummy's made sense of it. That's a really good question. Mummy's had that question before. This is what I would do. This is how I think about it.
Ejafo oni ne kosa esumi ensen a question ensen sunya de tosuna ne se afa na wankasa nso no unim dia wo fa question obisa no na won so no wo de ato so eno ne beboa ma ono nso no so te sa anyama na yina asena ono nso no ayi ano wo so no obo say na me ma me eyi ano fa na say na papa eyi ano fa ye na amanu ntiase bebree.
And one really good practical strategy is if you've got a jigsaw puzzle, just take one piece of the jigsaw and show the child that piece and ask them, what do you think this is a picture of? If I was to put the whole jigsaw together, the idea being that God knows the full picture, he knows the big picture, but we are only seeing that one small part that we're trying to make sense of. So it's trusting that everything will come together and we'll get a full understanding in time.
Afenso no obetia fa bibi ti se puzzle sa anyema bia ya no ye hihye kekese ni na bia a draw one particular picture na say a draw bibi pot na say environment bi sa no obetia fa ba ko na de enchecha obofo na hu say anyema no ededa honum ana say de how na say ewiase ne tibiasite no ya manim na nsu nyankopon kwa ne nim sania infoni no kese no esi etie. When
we go to managing uncertainty, because that's something that COVID has really thrown up for a lot of us, for under fives, we always try to teach them about life in a very kind of concrete way. If you cross the road, look both ways. The oven is hot, don't touch it.
Enyema bia etwase ye ene de ntwase ye ne ba mi ye hu say be as a woo can't come, she will be nifa. No, we'll see a mouth.
But that's a bit more tricky to do when we don't know when, for example, lockdown will end for certain, or when Boris is now going to decide whatever's going to happen to London. So one strategy of doing that is using the when and then strategy.
And in say, and we if we say, a pandemic here, and as a lockdown, cry, in bra, and Boris the man in South Fede Mumpi, and strategy via a via a and say a pre na Anna and no crouching so a debut.
For example, when the virus is gone, then we can hug people. When the government says it's okay, then we can go and see grandma.
Strategy via bet me develop back on say you besides question bit me and say, oh, say Yariano echo forma. You bet me aqua and create. Now say Yariano conforma and you bet me a moma banoma beside.
So you're not promising a time. You're helping them to identify this is what we're looking for, and this is what we do in response to it.
Into one show, my boss say now be no more who say Hana woman no say Annie Bay.
The next one is about what are the yeses. There's so many things that we say, no, you can't do. You can't play with your friends. You can't go and have a birthday party now. And all of those no's are very unsettling. So instead of saying the things that they can't do, help them to find certainty by giving them a sense of what they can do. So we can't go and see grandma, but we can send grandma a card or we can call her.
I don't know. After they toss me and say, Obama who near a bit me. Say, dear, that's what how make me say, oh, yet to me concoursa and Kirino, Nemo, you bet me a friend near Nakasa, and I say, bet me as smart cracker be at their command.
And when everything is uncertain, helping the child to see what God is doing. Remember, the only thing we have that's certain and constant is that God's character and his heart, and reminding the child of that in this season.
And what a house no, I was a brubian so your car abofano, a man who near Yame away how.
And you can do that by sharing stories or times in your life when you have felt uncertain and how God helped you to navigate that uncertain period and the outcome.
And bet me up Bob of Fran or Brabomu, a system, and Fatu Amabo Fran who sell call house saving.
For example, the story of Noah, right? You can use that, even though Noah's stuck on the boat, he's waiting for the water to go down. God is busy making the world around ready. So he's receding the water, he's planning the next steps. So this idea that God is doing something, even if we can't see it.
And to know that the Fatum brain so Bible at the Abuab of Fano. Say, fan say no appeal so na bonto no course so na fe assassin saba person no son for na who say me pastor ti yon na afe more money that should be no betim the San Fatumi na ya the Abua abofan.
5 to 11's a little bit similar. The main difference is that helping them to get that language to communicate how they're feeling in uncertainty.
Na my friends o madi enum kodu ba kono Omodi and yes, crazy. So, warm a moment who almost have a crown breakfast with Tinatina.
So, uncertainty might be a number of emotions. It might be worry or feeling disappointed or loss. So, help them to find the name for those emotions by exploring it with them, asking them, are you feeling lonely? Or, yeah.
Inti my friend, the answer will warm a moment who how now come. Inti Sabia home no more. Who now one beside questions say, are they will wrap one and I will Yadiana and only one more.
Helping them as well to find patterns of power. So with everything else that's uncertain, it can make you feel really powerless. But having a routine and consistency means I know on Saturday we are going to go church. I know on Saturday we're going to sit down as a family and discuss anything that we're concerned of. So create those patterns and opportunity for consistency.
To say how ne banso aya na ye ntumi no ano adwojo nti wo abo fan man hu say o twada ni nyina ne duru fie da nyina de be che memenda no hu say oh ene de ye hu me da ye baba betena se ene de ni nyina ba be di ahia mani hu wɔ ha no nyinaa mu no mmerɛ bi a ɔwɔ tumi nso otumi yɛ biribi.
And for pre-teens and teens, all of the above. But when it comes to helping them to be curious, essentially. So explore what their worry might be. For example, what's the worst thing you think that might happen if you didn't sit your exams this year? Help them to name, describe, and to engage with what might they be worried about.
Hawa ebetimi asiesie bi a omo antimi anye de omo akoma so ade a omo pena say bia mfa nse nsɔhwɛ nya lock it down na se wontimi ntwem so na se obisa say ti usua de kra se nsɔhwɛ na ama so a say no watenka ebeye eno be boa mu wahu.
And the added layer to this is around allowing the young person to have a window into seeing how you manage that same thing. We're all going through that period of uncertainty, right? So how do you explain to them how you are coping as a way of modeling to them? So, because I think, sorry, go ahead, Oferi.
Anunti no esa wo no a wo yanhwe so ma abofra no wo dan bibia di na wonam sade enso ne cheche no e ma nim say na obetimi atwe ne ho afiri how se bia wo konso hwe ti se ma na say na wo de ne ye na say na nya adisuade efiri mu na wo ti manage home sa.
Because what our children might see is we pray when as a family when we're worried about something, and then a few days later, mommy's fine, but they don't know what those steps are in between. So if it's, do you know what, God brought a Bible verse to my mind, or God brought this song that reassured me, or God reminded me of this thing that happened in my life. It helps them to understand the different parts towards you having that certainty. Communicate that with them.
He said, Bia, Obu said, Namami Yari, and as another Yari, Nabusen, Nakabo, Bomb Pie, Nami, Nunami, and Sabiachino, Mammy are sorry, or Nante Kama. Nansu dear Kuko, so Munina, and I said, I have sent by Munim. It is sad, I generally Ninkita, and fat a bribia, any senia, and she said,
And here's an idea on how to use Bible stories to help. Please do not go and open a Bible story and say, oh, there was this plague in Egypt, and there was this plague in this one, and there was this plague in what have you, right? That doesn't help to calm people down. In fact, what would be helpful is to help to find Bible stories that match the emotion of how the child is feeling about the pandemic.
And you know, Kwamba Kobetum so fast when say, ye de tresem no, boa mofrano. Ama omatiase so mko ha obuma yemfa nse pandemic e wo mu ubiti prekupa no akwa ko bie bible na o kan story bia na wodi John mama ne ha no wo mu hwe ne ha na wo ko mu no na fe yi bible story a enne asisem na ye kan wasem ese na wona ma no so dia cheche.
It doesn't matter if the story you don't see the outcome, it's about how they processed it and asking the child to be able to reflect and think about how might that person in the Bible have felt, or what helped them? What did God provide for them? You're starting to have a dialogue, a discussion about that.
And you say, be cry. I see some person have a funny come was him. You could be a chain or honor, but you know, like I say, a how a buy him. Say any say no more, yeah. It is only in ya and Gitam, dear, a howling stages in a bad one.
So I'll just use two examples. For example, if you're thinking about, if you're thinking about family conflict and feeling frustrated with your brothers and sisters, right? You can use the story of Joseph and his family. It kind of highlights how families can have tension and families can get on each other's nerves or dislike each other at times.
That is a young fan said, Samusiamu, na how ka crab room. Nasa opese o de Bible akwanche siesie sansem na wetin afa Joseph ni nuanom ene bra na odo ne niam bebre koso mu no ha wa na attention mu ene senia siesie ne koye no wetime gina no so na wo de aboa.
So with that, what you would talk about is, or why do you think God made them a family? Or how do you think that Joseph felt when his brothers treated him that way? How can you see God working in our family? it's those sort of questions that allow them to reflect and to think about how God equips us with the skills and the provision to navigate challenges.
And when you know, but me, I'm Sakwa Chacham known say, I didn't come and I make calm boom, say Abusia. I didn't know, of course, I how you. A bra, what is I in fact to know ya de Bobuano, bet me up one of a fan and swim. Bra, of course, I can a quite of a fast one at me attend nothing with his answer for me.
Or if your young person is saying something simple as, I'm missing my friends, I'm not near them, just think about how Paul would write so many letters to people, right? That is a form of being able to kind of communicate, and it highlights the sense of when people are far, how do we stay connected?
Intini sabofano wa pandemic you was say ana mintimi kwa sa madam fu mintimi kwa miyonku o mintimi ma ye ho a twena bi nsi say ti Paul ngoma bebre na krata bebre na otwe koma Korinto asafo afiso ni we ni nyina no na ya distance o mo wo nanso no otimi nam krata so ereche o mo.
Don't be afraid to talk to your children about lockdown. And this isn't just, oh, I'm going to tell you that school is locked, school is cancelled or what have you. You know, really explore it with them and make it fun. If you were in charge of online church, what would you do? What would you like to see at church?
I don't think a man money house what you have a friend to what church and mommy say lockdown I will say Anna etiana so be answered PM say na etie. If you say there's all the other friend first money who say Senkawo Anna Kaye ni would media na say Anna obey.
God said he makes all things work together for the good of those who love him. So what good things do you notice happening during COVID? That's another question.
Say, or ye na ye Emma wana or dono into a COVID year how you know a dear now bet me a casting and coupon ayama. I say bisa me bisa enemy. Dear now bet me a casting and coupon ayama.
Just want to invite as a closing for people to share from all the ideas that perhaps we've either discussed or some that you have in your own mind. What support do you currently have or have you started to appreciate during this pandemic? It might be practical support, emotional support, spiritual support.
And you know, where I met Thomas and I met Tomamuna, a bit yama said you knew that I say a bubo suya, you know, the Westia. Not a sea and a dear and I was to suit a wood team. So bet me I edia bois a for Fronso. A bet me about say a ye adia odo and sano ana aye. And answer a dream and moi, and answer whom and moi. I say, Bisa, I will say, you know, a dear a bit in the idea of boy and when a bit me about say a practical one. A bit me about say emotional and answer spiritual. A dear a bit me idea of boy. A bright tea sign singing in a course one answer the need him that and son a ready soon. Hagar, yeah.
Yo, kakra meka afa question na di kan no say emwa yenya free asafo no no de edos bebre ye hwe online asori ayeye ya aboa nkasa ne they said pathfinders ne adventure sessions now but during lockdown, you know, eboa mankwara no still ano omuhu say although they are far apart but they are still closer together because every week they hear their friends, they get together to worship together. And an online church, you know, has been so helpful.
Thank you very much. So during the lockdown, the online church has been so helpful. And that spiritually and emotionally or practically? All of them.
It's all of them.
Okay, thank you. Obinzo from Mwabi.
Or perhaps what support would you like to see us offer families?
And mmoa bɛn na wohwehwɛ sɛ nka wobɛnya wo nso a wo question bi anaasɛ mmoa bi saa no wobɛtumi de aba mmoa bɛn na wo nso wohwehwɛ sɛ nka wobɛnya ɛwɔ pandemic yi mu. I think mine is that, like you mentioned, that the second question is, what support can we work towards offering parents during this pandemic? So I'm putting it as a church, what support can we also work? Like this afternoon, I was looking back, I always monitor how many youth are online whilst we are worshiping. Even last week was youth week and today was children's program. So I tried calling some few people and then I got hold of them and we had a deep chat and then I gave some encouragement as well. So as we've studied this, we can also identify people who are not able to join and then we can call them and then find out how they are feeling. Perhaps they may not be able to speak to their parents, but they would be able to speak to you and that would be more helpful for us to identify their needs and then support them as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was thinking about someone's hand up.
No,
I was thinking about some very practical support. So, for example, if you've got lots of children and always busy, and you're a and you just kind of call or offer somebody, I'll order you a takeaway so that you don't have to go and stress and do all the cooking, just so you have one night off. That's something very practical and tangible and offers somebody a bit of a break to manage emotions.
You know, yeah, when we are more for problem, when I ever saw a bit in the abua among for brown more how be brain. So good man come best sad that they nothing or ye diani and anima be brain. What me man a practical moi a year kind say dia o meta diania brontin say what that ye any BBC. Nina am one kitten ketia a bit me I Auntie P.
Okay, also as parents, we should observe our children and identify their interests, things that makes them happy, so that we can engage them and we can develop that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, I see a who by be a friend so no almost near almost pay no. I see a who na fe ye boa a development ye effective. To be about meeting and now pa near Kenya and near Buan who Timmy and Musa and also a boa.
Yeah. So if for instance your child is an outdoor person, so not always indoors, you have to spend time, go outside. You can even count cars, green cars. You are in it with him or her. So that means you are engaging that child. And if she is or he is in an emotional stress or anything, he's ready or she's happy to let you know, and definitely you'll be able to identify that.
And you know, and what we are waiting there, said, yeah, can it be say, Sabo farmers say, about team friend as well, pa, a brave pandemic, you waiting in a piece of the more walk no. The Muyan Yan say, Monam cars ye can we, was a mere mafa blue, who's worth for yellow. No must start no more kind. It's a brow, I'm not can I be a sister now, or as a cab be peer Fred Yaban. Free, I've been how any kissing na okum a bois.
So in a nutshell, we have to engage with them. We have to play together as like the fathers, and even you can turn your living room as a football pitch. You can play together, and that child will be so happy to see mommy and daddy getting involved in his or her interest. That will also help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know, Sadia Antipin so Wakadia Sisudia said and Nancy can say, Yefa ya won share a mofrani mu na fe yenu omu eni agrobebre and I'm sorry as you bit me a you omu sembebre anu amomo. I told her be crying a living room on I ono. ebetimi awa agro ahodo bebre trampoline football bibia ebetimi adane dem on na bibia de bibi esi a ne asan hyehyɛ wonum kama ebeboa amemofra no afiri adwemu ha ahodo a omukomu emu.
Thank you so much for all the contributions and the amazing ideas. I guess I'll hand over to
Hagar.
I forgot.
Yada munyina amase ewo momoa enu madwenkyere no amaboa ma adesua no aye kama ni jai afan edema Hagar.
Yo, yada onyame ase bebre pempenso a ode ya bedri ewo ene ne homeda som yemu.
We thank the Almighty Father for bringing us to this far through our worship.
Asida ekoso etoso yede bema Dr. Nancy said that now work 3 consecutive weeks continuous 3 or 4 mpo esuni nyina wo frɛ na ahokeka a wode ba no yesonko awrade onhira wo na onye wakoma so ade nyina mfama.
The second thanks will go to Dr. Nancy Nsia. She's been doing very well these days. This is the 3rd or the 4th time she is presenting, and anytime you invite her, she is always on a rush to do the will or the work of God. And God bless you for that, Nancy.
First, you better yen brother foreign so ase. And I share from an opato now, and on him afraid echo. Omre ye ho nti Awurade onhira won so.
And God bless you too, Uncle Ofori, for supporting us.
Emofra nyina ne parents nso yɛda mo ase bebree na yɛhwɛ a ɛda yɛ sonko onyame ahyira yɛ sonko kwan so nti yɛda yɛ nyinaa yɛ ho ase nyame onhyira yɛ nyinaa bebree.
We also like to thank all parents and elders for supporting us through our day of worship. And God bless you all, the kids too, for taking part in these activities.
Ebere yɛdu so no yɛbɛma Bridget at the Vesper service na my but before then also obi our question and now contribution a chat to her. Yes, I straight away Bama Bridget at the Vesper service na Abre.
It's time for Bridget to give us the Vesper service or to lead the Vesper service. But before then, we are given a minute or two. If anyone have any question or contribution, can you please speak out before Bridget comes in?
Yo, se bibia any hosadia any Bridget the Vesper service in Bemayen, or we are not fair bomb pie na yede